Reports of anxiety and all-out panic are beginning, and it could have Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign spun up just a few days out from the election as time is running out.
The big issue, and so you take a national issue, like the economy and inflation, and then you boil it down to each state issue. In Pennsylvania, it's fracking. Again, ban fracking. She's tried to reverse that. But in Michigan, it is the EV mandate, the electric vehicle mandate, that is a job destroyer for auto workers. And it's something that no American wants because they don't want to be told, oh, you cannot drive a car or a pickup truck with an internal combustion engine in it.
Okay, so you guys may have heard about Hollywood actor Dave Batista, aka WWE star Batista, supposedly taking some jabs at Donald Trump's masculinity. Well, I watched the video and all I can say is this was the best 2 minutes and 21 seconds of wasted time, okay? Now, my uncle, who's been learning a lot of new words lately, he called it basic. That's right, guys, exactly that, basic. Yet another actor trying to hitch his wagon on the anti-Trump train, but ultimately still relying on our former commander-in-chief for his 15 minutes of headliner fame. You know what I mean? Now, sure, you know, people know Dave Batista from Marvel, but here's a description of his last movie with the company, a grotesque, exhausting adventure. Now, if you guys notice, I'm not showing you guys his video about Donald Trump. That's because it's not worth it. You could look it up on your own if you want, but I wouldn't bother. Instead, here are some of Batista's moments from his Marvel movie.
Metaphors are gonna go over his head.
Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I would catch it. I have sensitive nipples. You just need to find a woman who is pathetic. Like you. Rocket stole some of their batteries.
Dude!
Right. He didn't steal some of those. I don't know why they're after us. What a mystery this is. What are they called again?
Annulax batteries.
Harvey Larry batteries. I have famously huge turds.
Yes!
One might assume she was dead.
That does sound pretty hot.
It would make my nether regions engorge. Oh. We leave no one behind, except maybe you.
Oh, and before this, guys, he was a star on WWE. You know, guys running around in their underwear, jumping off the top ropes. Yeah, well, here's Batista.
I hate you too!
What do you guys think? Should Donald Trump really be intimidated by this guy? Because he called our former president a whiny little something something. And yeah, so his rant was even accompanied by images and clips of Donald Trump during his presidency and his campaign. But instead, Trump campaign spokesperson Stephen Chung was the one who pushed back on Dave Batista's ad about Donald Trump. Chung pointed out that President Trump is a WWE Hall of Famer. Dave Batista is not, because he's a stone cold loser who was unprofessional and took his ball home when he refused to put over young talent. He then returned back to the company that made him, and he found out quickly that he couldn't wrestle and has no mic skills whatsoever. Now, that's a pretty strong takedown. Now, honestly, guys, who's still being fooled by these Hollywood celebrities, right, guys? Now, what these kinds of stunts are really just telling me is that the Harris campaign is absolutely desperate at this point, and they're just trying to pull every celebrity connection that they can in order to stay relevant. Because let me tell you guys, they are struggling, you guys.
The big issue, and so you take a national issue, like the economy and inflation, and then you boil it down to each state issue. In Pennsylvania, it's fracking. Again, ban fracking. She's tried to reverse that. But in Michigan, it is the EV mandate, the electric vehicle mandate, that is a job destroyer for auto workers. And it's something that no American wants because they don't want to be told, oh, you cannot drive a car or a pickup truck with an internal combustion engine in it.
The New York Post reporting that Democrats in Pennsylvania, that all-important state, say that Harris is, quote, AWOL and being out-messaged. These are Democrats saying this. This as Reuters claims that anxiety is rising in the VP's campaign over Trump's swing state gains. And Democrats are telling Politico that they see warning signs for Harris with Latino men in the must-win state of Pennsylvania. You know, Dagan, one thing I love to do, and maybe it's because I was in press and comms, is read behind the headlines. And when you have Democrats coming out with anxiety, leaking to publications on the state, Pennsylvania Democrats, national Democrats, it usually is a sign that there's some nerve-wracking appetites happening in the campaign.
Right, and I also love to read into what the Senate candidates are saying. And if you look at, let's just look at Michigan, for example. So in the Real Clear Politics average in Michigan, President Trump is up by almost 1 full point, 0.9 points. Alyssa Slotkin up over Mike Rogers, 2.2 points in that state. And both of them.
Reports of anxiety and all-out panic are beginning, and it could have Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign spun up just a few days out from the election as time is running out.
So both Alyssa Slotkin, who's running for Senate as a Democrat, and Kamala Harris have said both, I will never tell you what kind of car you have to drive. Yeah, you have. She has, because the EPA tailpipe emissions regulation essentially mandates, it's a de facto mandate, that 2/3 of the vehicles in 8 years in the United States of America must be partially electric or fully electric. That is a mandate, and that is a killer for Kamala Harris and Alyssa Slotkin just in the state of Michigan.
Even internal polling from both parties, some say this is the real polling, show that the race is over and the Democrats know it. Some may even just be going through the motions right now as they're preparing for the worst election of their lives. But let's talk about Kamala's campaign for a second here, because the whole thing has just been a cringe fest from the get-go. Firstly, President Joe Biden's disastrous debate performance in June, it just left a clear impression that he seems old, struggling, and no longer up for the task. And the polls absolutely reflected that. So major Democratic decision makers like Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, and Kamala Harris, they basically teamed up and sprang into action. They had to make a decision. The Democratic elite, thinking that they knew what was best for the 75 million voters, well, they decided that it was time to move on from Uncle Joe and go ahead and bring in the new face of the party, Kamala Harris. But what Harris and the National Democrats didn't realize was that while this might have been a necessary step on the national stage, it was a terrible move when it came to Pennsylvania. Now, if you're a Democrat and you want to win in 2024, you need Pennsylvania in your column. Their first major mistake was taking the state for granted. It was actually Joe Biden's ties to Scranton that helped him to secure thousands of Democratic votes in northeastern Pennsylvania, which has been leaning more Republican lately. Now, without Joe Biden and his very familiar stories about growing up there, it's kind of hard to imagine San Francisco Harris holding on to those same voters. And let's not forget, for more than 30 years, guys, voters in Pennsylvania and its suburbs have seen Joe Biden as practically a third senator. He was always there at the local events, sporting events, games, community ribbon cuttings. So when Republicans tried to paint Joe Biden as a puppet for the far left in 2020, it didn't quite work with the same people in southeastern Pennsylvania. But now, with Comrade Kamala Harris at the top of the Democratic ticket, that line of attack is proving to be ineffective in 2024. But the blunders did not stop there. You see, they were actually courting Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro as her running mate. But what did Kamala Harris do? She ended up choosing Minnesota Governor Tim Walz instead, a state better known for electing people like Jesse the Body Ventura and Al Franken from Saturday Night Live. Now, many critics thought that this was a big, huge misstep for Kamala Harris's chances in Pennsylvania. Shapiro might not be Biden, but he's well known and he's pretty well liked in the Philadelphia area and has a way of connecting with voters in places like Scranton and other towns across the state. And we still don't know why Kamala Harris passed on Shapiro. Was it because he's Jewish and supports Israel's right to defend themselves? Or maybe he's a tireless campaigner who could overshadow her? Was she worried about upsetting the progressive squad in Congress and potentially losing key votes in Michigan with its large Muslim population? Or maybe she was actually afraid that choosing Shapiro would stir up talk among her supporters that maybe he should have been the one that was running. Kamala Harris's mistakes didn't end there, though. More on that and the other blunders that the Democratic Party is currently covering up later in this video. But first, guys, just a real quick thanks for staying with us so far. Appreciate you guys so much for watching again, and thank you for always hitting the like button. I appreciate the support. But now, guys, this is just me, but let me know if you agree. Harris made some things worse by picking Tim Walz. This is somebody who's arguably very much from the modern left wing of the Democratic Party. You see, Tim Walz, he won't win her any votes in Pennsylvania. It's just not going to happen. It's a fact. He's actually going to make it harder for her. She picked somebody who doesn't connect with people anywhere, from Philly's neighborhoods to small towns in rural Pennsylvania. And frankly, he's just kind of weird. And the whole thing just gets so much worse when you add on her message, agenda, and policies. Everything's just falling flat here, guys. She's tried to argue that the economy is actually doing well, Bidenomics is working, she says. They've thrown out charts, graphs, and so-called experts, but nobody in Philadelphia is buying it, especially not Black and Hispanic voters who are getting hammered by inflation and violent crime. So Harris switched gears. She flip-flopped, as some may call it, promising to fix the economy and fight inflation now. But now her overused line about being raised in a middle-class family, all it does is get blank stares, laughter, or even frustration from most of us and people in her base. Kamala Harris was anti-fracking up until she wasn't, and now she claims that she's all for it. You know why? Because fracking is a key issue in Pennsylvania. Duh. She's like, dang, I didn't mean to say that. But rural Pennsylvanians, they're not fooled. They know her policies would hurt northern, central, and even western Pennsylvania's economy, not to mention the country's economy and national security. They even tried wooing rural Pennsylvania with Tim Walz and second gentleman Doug Emhoff's Real Men for Kamala tour, complete with ads and Zoom calls telling men that they should support her. I'm sorry, guys. These are not real men. Then they went and sent Tim Walz hunting. Huge mistake. Some say that the Minnesota governor looked more like Elmer Fudd than anything else. He had brand new hunting clothes, the wrong rifle, and a face that was just so clueless about how to even load the dang gun. Seriously, guys, Tim Walz, he came off like King Charles at the Indy 500. Democrats, they want to win Pennsylvania, but they've picked the wrong candidate in the wrong way. Kamala Harris made it worse by choosing the wrong running mate, and now they're running on a platform that's just misguided. Critics call it downright delusional at this point. Now, when all else failed, they sent in multi-millionaire Barack Obama on a private jet to lecture working-class Black male voters in Pittsburgh. Tone deaf is what it came off as. You see, the former president just lectured his Pennsylvania voters about how they have an alleged duty to support a Black candidate and how they must overcome their alleged dislike of having a woman in charge. It's not about having a woman in charge. I wish they would stop saying that, honestly. But really, I don't think that he convinced anyone. In a state that Donald Trump carried by 0.7 points back in 2016 and then lost by 1.4 points in 2020, the margin of victory is razor thin, guys. Needless to say, guys, there's no room for unforced errors. Too bad for Kamala Harris, they're full of them. Harris and the National Democrats have either made a major miscalculation, or maybe they just see their candidate's record and platform just don't seem to matter. You see, I don't know if it's ignorance or if it's arrogance. Which one is it, guys? It seems like they think that they've already got this locked down because of their Democratic brand. I guess they may just be proven wrong when Pennsylvania votes them out in November. But what do you guys think? And I keep saying this, guys, but it bears repeating. It's the economy, stupid. Americans are getting squeezed by inflation and home prices left and right. Chipotle's president and chief strategy officer recently commented that restaurant sales are down for everybody.
Last call, you did talk about how you finally may have hit a point of resistance in California, at least. You can't just keep raising price. How do you feel about the consumer right now and how much they can absorb? And let's throw in the fact that, I don't know about you guys, but my lunch, it's just too big. I'm having it as lunch and dinner. I feel it's a bargain, but I also am sensitive to the idea that there's a lot of people around the country who need a bargain.
So, Jim, we watch it really close throughout the country, and we continue to have really strong value scores. We get high scores for the amount of food for the money, the quality of food for the money. Frankly, our read on California is less about resistance to our price increase, and it's more of a macro impact. Because when you look at the restaurant industry, the restaurant transactions are down for everybody, and that it really doesn't matter whether you took a small increase, as some companies did, and a very large increase, as some companies did. We took an increase about in the middle, and pretty much across the board, there was a pullback from the consumer. So I think it's more of a macro resistance to inflation in general in California.
And the same thing from former Target Vice Chairman Gerald Storch. He warned that holiday spending will likely disappoint this year. He said that it's very clear that consumers are running out of money and they're increasingly stressed by inflation and the exhaustion of their pandemic-era savings. They asked him on Fox about his expectations for the holiday shopping season this year. Well, he said he didn't expect too much, frankly. He mentioned how over the last several years, what you see month after month, everybody talks about. The consumer is still spending. They might be, but they're spending less than the growth of inflation. Now, another expert sounding the alarm is Heatha Herzog, Chief Research Officer at H Squared Research and part-time faculty at Parsons School of Design. She said that prices remain high for basic items such as grocery, fuel, and clothing. So for the retail expert, sticker shock just does not bode well well for discretionary purchases, specifically around the holidays. Well, what about you guys? Have you been dealing with inflation lately? Yeah, let me know what you guys think about this and the real issues this election in the comments, guys. And hey, feel free to share what you think about Dave Batista's anti-Trump ad too. You know, I always love hearing from you guys. More on this and other important updates as we get closer and closer to the most important election of our lives. Now, don't be a stranger, you guys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, tap that notification bell so you do not miss out on any of our election breakdowns and analyses. Now, speaking of, I highly recommend you guys checking out our recent videos on the channel as well. We just did one where Donald Trump's recent appearance on Fox News where he tore down Kamala Harris and he left no crumbs. Now, seriously, guys, straight up mic drop moment of the week. You should definitely check that video out right after this one. As always, thanks so much for hitting the like button and subscribing. We'll see you guys next time.